Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Smart Money. Today on Smart Money, Radhika Gupta of Edelweiss is joining me to talk about the rising social media influence on several sectors, particularly retail investors in the mutual fund space. So this is something that everyone's talking about. The mutual fund growth that we've seen has been phenomenal in the past couple of months and in fact the past couple of years. And a large part of that growth has been due to rising social media and digital infrastructure, that is. Radhika, thank you so much for joining us on CNBC TV18. First, I want to start by just setting the context, right? How has retail investor participation impacted the mutual fund industry's AUM in India? Now it's reached 50,000 crores, right, in terms of AUM. So what kind of growth do you see here on, and how has social media played a part?
So I think it's been a phenomenal run in terms of growth, but I always say it's a large target market and it's just beginning to take off. If you look at the past, retail AUM is largely equity-focused AUM, and today we have about 30 lakh plus crores of equity AUM in the industry, and that is largely retail investor AUM. You guys keep reporting we have almost a 20,000 crore SIP book. To give you context, when I joined this industry in 2017, it was 4,000 crores. And I don't think anyone could have predicted this kind of headline growth. And I think words like SIP and mutual fund, I joke, have become the material of memes. So they've really become a part of popular culture. And that is only going to expand as younger generational people are part of a more aspirational India. So I think you moved from the FD and post office generation to the generation like me who started equities when they were 30 or 25. To the generation who's watching Shark Tank and hearing about the word equity when they're 7 or 8 years old. So I think that's a natural expansion. And yet we have miles to go before we sleep. If you look at equity penetration in India, mutual fund AUM as a percentage of GDP, it's still about 16%. The global average, I'm told, is at 80% now. So we have 5 times of a distance to cover. So lots of room covered, but lots more to cover. And at least the faith in mutual funds structurally as a product has made a lot of headway. It's interesting, this growth, a lot of growth also happened in the post-COVID era because of digitization. I think digital platforms, fintechs, etc., made mutual funds easy to access. Even a lot of distributors who do transactions do it through platforms like PSE or NSE. So most of our transactions are digital in some form. This also coincided, back to social media, with a rise in 4G penetration in India, with a rise in the number of mobile phone subscribers. So can you attribute exact causation? No, but it's happened in the background of geo rising, mobile phone penetration rising, social media users rising. All that has happened and made mutual fund a much more convenient access product. Today, as a younger AMC, you don't need to set up a branch in a tier 3 city because every mobile phone in some sense is a branch for you.
Absolutely. And as you said, SIPs, mutual funds has now become a part of popular culture, and that's happened in the last 5-7 years. So you said we've gone from 4,000 crores of an SIP book to 20,000 crores maybe in the past 6-7 years. What is the scope from here on? And can you help us understand how does the rise in mutual fund folios correlate with the increase in broadband subscribers?
Yeah, so if you look at, I did some projections for 5 years from now, and I think you will be sitting on a 100 lakh crore mutual fund industry. From 50 lakh crore today, you'll be sitting on a 100 lakh crore mutual fund industry. You also will be sitting on an SIP book that's 30 to 35,000 crores in 5 years from now, which is a very large number. That means 2.5 lakh crores, no, 3.5 lakh crores of flow, gross flow is going to enter the equity markets via retail SIPs every month, every year. And that is a big number. Over this period, and I think our report covers some of this, over this period where you've seen staggering mutual fund growth, you've also seen mobile phone subscribers grow at 12% plus. You've actually seen social media subscribers grow remarkably. India today has 80 crore people on some kind of social media. Those numbers surprised me. I think 5 years ago, that number was closer to 40 crores. So mobile phones have grown, social media has grown exponentially.
So social media has grown, mobile phone users have grown, and mutual fund adoption is picking up. But what's also grown is the number of influencers, influencer subscriber base has, and they have become an important part of now this entire ecosystem, right? Can you tell me, how does one, as an average investor or retail investor watching us right now, how do you cut through all this noise? Because there's a lot of clutter out there.
Yeah, and there are two sides to it. And I read this interesting statistic that if you look at investing decision making, social media is one of the top 5 drivers of decision making. And when people go and search YouTube, half the searches are for those individual channels, not corporate channels, not things run by people like you and me who represent corporates, but channels run by individuals and influencers. And some of these guys have reach in the hundreds of thousands and also in the millions. I think as a viewer or a listener, there are a few things you have to think about. One is, how credible is the person giving financial advice? And I always say, check the qualifications. I mean, you take medical advice from a qualified professional. I think you should be taking financial advice from a qualified professional. These days, everybody seems to be giving financial advice. The second is, read the fine print. And there is a lot of fine print in this, because the scariest thing about the negative side of influencers is the incentives to give you a particular piece of advice. So someone has told you online, Sonia, buy this. But why have they told you this? What are the hidden incentives? In traditional distribution models, etc., commissions, everything is disclosed. Here it isn't disclosed. So find those disclosures. Why is someone giving you that advice? I think is extremely important. And the third is, I think, do your own research. There's a lot of what I call clickbait content out there on social media. Double your money in a year. Some of this stuff is not realistic. Don't fall for the clickbait content and go and do your individual research.
Okay, that's interesting. So, just for the benefit of our viewers and for people who perhaps are starting their journey right now, what are the primary mutual fund terms that investors in India typically search for before making any investment decisions?
It should not surprise anyone, but it's actually all SIP related.
Okay.
It's systematic investment plan, best SIP to invest in, SIP calculator. The top 5 words, I think 4 of them are SIP related.
How to invest.
How to invest via SIP, it's all SIP related. In fact, if you go to many audiences, I did this on the Shark Tank sets, and you do a poll of how many of you have heard the word mutual fund, maybe 50% will raise their hand. But if you ask how many have heard the word SIP, maybe 80-90% will raise their hands. And SIP has become a more popular word than mutual fund. In fact, it's very common for people to hear, I'm not doing a mutual fund, I'm doing an SIP. So that, and coincidentally, you've seen 4 to 20,000 crores, this growth in the SIP book. So SIP is actually the most popular term. The other ones are best mutual fund to invest in, and not all of these are good terms. Best mutual fund to invest in, best performing scheme to invest in. There was a mid and small cap phase also.
Absolutely. I have to come back to that earlier point you were making, and it's very important. You said that when people go and search on YouTube, they search more for personal brands. They search for people rather than corporate brands, right? I've seen your journey as well ever since you joined Edelweiss, and now on Shark Tank, you've sort of built your own personal brand. Have you seen a disproportionate rise in the number of people that come to Edelweiss to manage their money now compared to, say, what it was 1 year ago before you started building your brand?
I think it's been gradual for us as me individually, and for us as a brand. Social media has been an important part of the strategy. Over the years, yes, a lot more people engage with us on social media. I mean, the number of people who write to me on Twitter with queries on how to invest for your child, which is a topic that we've spoken about. I mean, I get tons of queries about that. The number of people that come to the brand. In fact, the brand, incidentally, is the most followed mutual fund brand on Instagram today.
Oh, wow.
So this is some of the gradual stuff that has started happening.
But does that lead to conversions, or is it just for discovery and for reach? I'm just trying to understand, does it directly lead to conversions for you?
I don't think it is going to directly lead to conversions for any financial services brand. I think it is great to engage with the brand. So for us, in a world where there are 40, 45 different mutual fund brands, actually now 50, how do you get discovered, especially when you're not advertising a lot offline? Online is a great way. So we think of it as brand building. We don't think I have to sell Edelweiss mid-cap fund because I'm present on social media. We want people to be aware of what the brand stands for, to connect with the brand, to do investor education on the brand. If we can just do that, conversion happens. Financial decision making is a lot more complex. Just because I've seen an ad, because I've heard the word Edelweiss mid-cap fund on Shark Tank, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to research the fund. I'm going to study the performance. I'm going to compare the fund. And to be honest, I should do all those things. But social media is a great way to do brand building. It's also a great way to do customer service. So when you have an aggrieved investor, if one of the funds is going through a bad run, it's a great way to communicate with partners.
Okay, so we are saying that social media now serves as the primary influencer for young investors, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's fair to say that?
Yeah, it does. I think for young investors, by the way, half of the new investors to the MF industry fall in the Gen Z millennial bracket. That wasn't the case a few years ago. I think that number was 30%. And if you look at where a Gen Z or millennial spends their time, 60% of their mobile time is social media. So it is obvious that influence is a very big part.
And that's a very important question that I keep asking people who are in this space and who are perhaps using advertisers, right?
Yeah.
Between legacy advertising platforms like, say, print, television, radio, and the new age platforms like social media, how has the dynamics changed for the mutual fund industry over the last couple of years? How much have the spends gone down in legacy and gone up in social?
I think traditional brands still use legacy a lot. A brand, mutual fund Sahi Hai, which is the industry's campaign, uses a lot of TV. Now that, of course, has much larger budgets, so it can afford to be effective. I think if you look at traditional brands, they do a core amount of spend is on print, it's on outdoor, it's on television. I think very few brands are actually using social media very seriously. I think newer age brands like ours feel that perhaps we can make an impact on social media.
Okay, well, I have to ask you a lot more about that. So I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to take a quick commercial break, but don't go anywhere. We'll come back in just a while to talk about the influence that social media has had on the mutual fund industry and on your investment decisions. Stay tuned.